Hello and welcome again to another Edgar Casey On. This is kind of a remake of one that we did several years ago, but it's been retitled called What Does the Spirit World Look Like in 3D or 3 Dimensions? As always, we start with a disclaimer. There is no official interpretation of the Edgar Casey readings. This is an interpretation according to me, John, so it's the Gospel of John, as I entitle it, and I invite you to go ahead and research this to your heart's content or ask all the questions you want in the comments section in order to be able to go on from there. But this is not an official position from anyone but me. Okay, let's start out with time and space, because you wind up having everything coming from the mind of God. First of all, you'll be able to see on the left and the right smaller boxes right here, you have something that are called flip books. And those are just individual image pages that when you flip them, you can see that there is an image that seems to be moving from side to side. Now, if you're wondering, how does all this fit together? Look at the image in the middle. Imagine that there's just one point of which anything exists, and that's the mind of God. Actually, science calls that the singularity from which the Big Bang occurred. Now, if you think of that point actually folding back in on itself, as you see that box doing right there, and then you think about what a film looks like that you have shown in projectors and old theaters and things like that, that each one was an individual frame that had no motion of its own, but as it went forward, it appeared to be moving. This is giving you more of an idea of what that looks like in 3 dimensions, so that the box starts moving around itself and seems to have forward motion, but in fact is going nowhere. And it's just an illusion. So let's go ahead and analyze that for a second. In this left graphic right here, you see I have 0, 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, and 3 dimensions. I come over to the 4th dimension over here with the spheres and the hypercube. And this graphic down here is actually a little clip from a movie that's called Flatland. It's a book that's over 100 years old now, probably closer to 125 years. And it's a story about a 2-dimensional place of which life was taking place, and one of the 2-dimensional beings was taken up into the 3-dimensional world and shown what his world looked like from a higher dimension. So we're going to be doing a lot of that today. So starting with 1 or the 0 dimension, in Flatland, the 3-dimensional being takes the 2-dimensional being to a 0-dimension individual. Now that person thinks they're the only thing that exists. And so even when they start talking to him and he's aware that there are other voices, he goes, how incredible am I that I can actually make up more than one person? And so that's what a 0 dimension doesn't see anything around them. All right. Now, if you get into 1 dimension, that's just a line. Instead of a point, you have a point and then another point, and that's the being that's right in there. Now, if they're all in a line like that, in Flatland, they have it so that they can talk to each other. So they're aware that the other beings exist, but what do they see? It's kind of like the line of burrows that are all in a line. And so the one in the back sees the back side of the one in the front, and so on and so on. So they only see a point. But in the 1-dimensional world, they are hearing each other, and so they understand that there are other beings that are in this line. Now, you move over to 2 dimensions, and you wind up having this thing just like it is in Flatland over here. So when you have 2-dimensional beings, they only see a line to the extent that you would take that square and put it on its side. Now, if you moved it around in a circle like that, that line would get larger and smaller. All right, I'm not going to spend time on it too much here because I'm going to show you examples of it later on. And of course, 3 dimensions you're used to of having length, width, and height. Now here's the interesting part. Remember that hypercube I showed you in the very beginning where the cube starts to fold in on itself and appears to have motion even though it's standing in the same place. So this is the hypercube showing a 4th dimensional view of what's going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at that from a different perspective than just trying to draw it here on the flat screen. Take a look at that. Now, this is very similar as we're looking at it to what a 1-dimensional being is, because here we just have a straight line going across. And so these end-to-ends right here are all individual beings if we were thinking of it in that earlier example. Now, as you're looking at this from a three-dimensional standpoint, as we live in right now, can you tell me what that thing is? And that's the problem. Our perception is always going to be different depending on which dimension we are in at that particular time. So let me show you. That's what you were looking at, behind the line right there. So there's all this activity. There's so much more going on than what we could see right there than just that line that was going across. Got it? So when you're looking at this is the reality of what was going on, whereas this was all we could see from that limited perspective that we have from a two-dimensional world. All right, so let's go take this a step further now. I put a little dot up here because in the beginning, there was God. That's all there was. There was just God with an infinite amount of potential, right? And so God goes, well, actually, the Edgar Cayce readings say God moved. That's exactly what happened as far as everything going on in the manifest universe, that God moved. Now, when you take a look at this plane right here, you think, first of all, we go ahead and create a playing field. The reason that I put a plane out there, first of all, is to kind of indicate this is a game. All right, this is like a chessboard right here. I don't think it is it. Yeah, it's actually got enough squares. So you wind up having a chessboard. Now you have a chessboard, but guess what? You can have an infinite number of games that you could put on there, depending on the pieces and how they move, and take each other on the board like that. That is a set of rules that we all come up with. And so you can just take this one flat piece of, in this case, I'm going to show you it's paper because we're going to bend it real easily. But you take this one piece and say, we're going to play games on this field using all sorts of different rules. That's the manifest universe. So next up, now you're going to watch this piece of paper turn into a tube. And then that tube itself is going to turn in on itself and become a donut or a torus. Now it's going to continually repeat as I describe what's going on. If you take that flat space right there, that piece of paper, and you turn it into a tube and you start moving around in it, you could say that that's space. And as you're moving around, it's infinite, isn't it? Because as long as you stay on the outside of that tube, it's going to go on forever and ever. And when that tube turns into the donut or the torus on there, consider that to be infinite time. So that it doesn't matter if you're going around the circumference of the thing, it goes on forever and ever. And you can never get off the tube and you can never get off the torus as long as you stay on that surface area. Herein is why we are entrapped in three dimensions. We don't even know there's another place to go because we're so convinced that's all that exists. Now, when you take a look at the outside graphics here, this one on the left is almost what it would look like if we're experiencing time going backward. Because everything's going in this direction in that graphic, but we're headed in the other direction. We're literally headed backwards because we aren't existing on the surface of all of the things going forward, the dimensions of time and space going forward. So this could be the third dimension right here, and this could be the fourth dimension in the grid on the outside. And here I'm giving you the other perspective in which this torus or donut is turning in on itself. It's a little harder to see, I'm sure, but the outside is rolling inside. So it's going like that all the way through. So you have infinite time and space, even though it's a very finite area according to what we can see. Okay, so the question on the title there says, how does karma work when seen from the astral planes? This is, you're going to follow this in a second. It's going to continue to go like that so I can point out what's going on. Imagine that the entire cube right there is the manifest universe. And now imagine that the darker circle in the center is the earth plane. So we have the earth plane, and when we are out of the earth plane is when we're in our astral bodies, and when we're in the earth plane is when we're in those little blue circles that are going around and around in a circle, around and around in the earth. Now, I'm going to point out one thing. Let's take any one of these circles right here and just follow it for a second. Let's watch this one right here, and notice that it's going right back across to the other side, and it's going to come right back across again. And it ends up in the same space on the opposite side of the circle as it started. That is the truth for every single one of the circles on there. In other words, what I'm indicating is that as our lives go through there, there's actually a direction to it. as according to our free will, of course. But what you're looking at right here, as far as this moving around, it looks like there's a lot of motion. But now let's take a look at the lavender or purple spheres that are above that. You're going to notice that they go in and out of the same holes each and every time they go past through the earth plane. So if you're thinking of karma and how does it work, how does it keep up with us, if you look at the motion of how things are going, it's as inevitable that those balls are going to fall into the same holes as they came out of. So you sow and you reap. You sow and you reap, going right back through. And it keeps very good track of us according to our vibrations and how we do that. I'm going to try to get this slide up in post-production so that you'll see it a little better. It's just here for humor. This is the only known picture of Schrodinger's cat in the box. You can't see it from here very well, but there's actually a cat behind this glass door. But because of the reflection of the box there, it looks like the cat's in the box on the right side, and there's no cat on the left. So sorry if it doesn't come across as humorous. All right, so how does an ethereal soul insert itself into 3 dimensions? You've probably seen these kind of little pin things that I've got illustrated here in Spencer's Gifts, or some kind of gift shop like that, in which we impress ourselves into 3 dimensions so that our physiognomy, as it's called, or the way that we physically look, is a reflection of who we actually are in 3 dimensions. Although we're still in spirit, and then when we push ourselves through, you can see a hand or a face or just a partial face, as you're able to see right there. The point being, it's not saying that every single lifetime this is exactly what we look at as a soul, but every single lifetime we come in with a soul's purpose. And from that purpose, we develop a personality and talents and conditions, intelligence, wealth, that sort of thing. All of that comes together to have a physical manifestation of what is going to best suit our spiritual growth in that particular life. Okay, so you can just see in the same way we can impress ourselves in there, but we put the foot forward that meets the spiritual goal of what we're trying to do in that particular lifetime. Now, here's some different perspectives of time and movement around. If you see this kind of figure 8 that's over here to the side, try to figure out what that is for a second. You see a figure 8 right there, and I can tell you that this is a camera that is set in one location, and let's say at like between 2 and 3 o'clock every day for a year, it just took a picture. What you're seeing there is the rotation of the sun. This is what it would look like if you were to go out there. The sun is actually, from an earthly perspective, making a figure 8 if you were to just look at the exact same time throughout the year. This will become clear as I start showing you some other indicators. Now, here's another one in which we run into people from the other side. I remember there's a fascinating Casey reading in which he was done with a reading. He came back in, and all of a sudden he starts talking. And what they could tell from the earth was that he had run into a deceased relative of his on his way back to his body. And they start having a conversation, so it's almost like Casey was on the phone, and we were only hearing Casey's side of the conversation, because he could hear the guy, we couldn't. And so Gladys Davis Turner starts taking down Casey's side of the whole thing and trying to get some of the questions answered they had along the way. One of the interesting things is Casey asked about a recently deceased relative, and he goes, how is so-and-so who had passed over? And they said, oh, she's moved on to another place. And he said, how long ago was that? And then the answer came back, oh, they don't count time like we do. Now, that's what this middle one will indicate. If you go from here to here and think of that as being our human lifespan, and this gap right in here is 5 years from where the triangle takes off to where it comes back down, you see that if this is when the person died, they go up and down, and let's call that 20 years. It was 10 years away to go to wherever they went, 10 years back, and they come down, but it was only 5 years in our experience, but they experienced 20 years at the same time. If you follow all these videos, I did a kind of a book report on Return from Tomorrow, talking about Dr. George Ritchie, who had a near-death experience in World War II. He said that he experienced all 20 years of his life from beginning to that point up there. And this happened in a period of 9 minutes of what had occurred on Earth. So time, as far as what we experience on the other side, is very different from the amount of time that elapses here. This is, I love this graphic on this side because it gives us three different perspectives. This perspective is true, that perspective is true, and then there's the truth. Because if you're looking over here and you have this tube and you're looking at it from the side of the tube, as you can see from the shadow, is going to come off as a square. But if you're over here at this end of the tube and you're looking at it, it's going to come off as a circle. But we know that it's a tube, and so depending on your perspective, you're going, oh, this is a tube. It's not a two-dimensional square, it's not a two-dimensional circle, it's a three-dimensional tube, and so there's actually three different truths here, depending on what your perspective is in looking at it. So if you're wondering how we can have liberals and conservatives and have them both be spiritual people, this is a pretty good indicator of how that can happen. All right, what are you seeing here? This is our solar system and how it actually moves through the Milky Way galaxy. What you're seeing right here are the tight orbiting patterns around the sun that you have of Mercury, of Venus, of Earth, and of Mars. Okay, and then you can see Saturn and Jupiter here are in a tighter pattern going around it, and Uranus and Pluto and Neptune are further out. All right, but everything is doing this kind of coiled thing going through. I always think it's fascinating that this is actually very much like a helix inside a DNA molecule. So if you're taking a look at this and you're going, wow, we've got this helix thing going as far as the pattern of life, I think it's fascinating that it tends to repeat itself on a cosmic scale as well as on a microscopic scale. But understand this is how we're moving around instead of just being this static pattern of going around the sun. The sun's in constant motion. Okay, so what you're going to see here is, think of this as the Big Bang. Think of this as all the molecules that he just said, let there be light, and everything goes out there. Now you see all of these glowing balls that they have going back and forth are going to go ahead and do that whole thing that happens in the universe, in the manifest universe, and being able to go back and forth. In a minute here, it's going to come into another helix again. So it just seems like a natural pattern. See the DNA helix starting to appear? And there it is. So you wind up having that show up as a natural result when you just let everything go. And it's got the vibratory patterns out there. The vibratory patterns are already pre-programmed to come up with like this DNA helix of life that we're so used to seeing. It'll do that helix one more time in here. I'll switch off to the next slide. But it's just fascinating that it seems to happen naturally in nature as far as how life came to be. Was it a big chance? Well, apparently not. Okay, now you're seeing a bottle of water, a regular 12-ounce bottle of water, going into a freezer, and this freezer is incredibly cold. So they're freezing it. You're going to see it goes 2 minutes, 45 seconds, and it's minus 11 Fahrenheit, but see, it's still water. Now, here's an important point. This is what I think happens. Punk, and that whole thing is turning into a chunk of ice, completely ice inside that bottle now. And what is happening there is all the conditions were correct for it to become ice. It was well below the point of freezing. It was water, which has a freezing point of 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And what it needed in order to finish that cycle was a catalyst, that thunk off to the side caused it to happen. What you're seeing here is just other tricks that they can play with it as far as they already had cold ice there, and then they pour the water on top of it. And this one, I think they're going to drop an ice cube in it. Yeah, drop an ice cube in it, and that is the catalyst that's turning that entire glass into one great big block of ice. Okay, what I think this is really important as far as telling us is we could very well be in the millennium already. We are experiencing some massive changes back and forth. You know of all of the strife in the Middle East and the Ukraine and between ourselves and the major superpowers, et cetera. And with all of that, that could very well be the thunk, the catalyst, that it makes everybody get together, finally go, enough. We've had enough of this strife, enough of the conflict. We really need to be able to come together. A good example I use for this is the Renaissance. You say, when did the Renaissance occur? I defy you to give me a date that actually took place. It's because when you go, oh, between 1450, 1500, somewhere in there, and that 50-year gap right there means nothing to us now that we're after the fact. But if you're right there in the middle of it, you go, are we in the Renaissance? I can point to things that makes us feel that way, but maybe not. I tend to think that we are actually already into the millennium right now, and we are going through this catalyst thing that is making that clear to us, getting us together. Now, this is the Milky Way. You're going to start to see a pattern. Remember, we had the figure 8 as far as how the sun seemed to appear from the earth, as far as we're going in this coiled pattern as we go around in the Milky Way. And notice that it's actually following a circle here in the top and here in the bottom, and that it seems to be moving like a manta ray, if you're familiar with that sea creature, as far as how its fins flap inside of the water right there. And so you're seeing this is the pattern of what the Milky Way does as it actually circles not only around itself around the center, but around the entire manifest universe as we know it. So we have to get used to understanding that things as we feel that they are. Remember, we started out thinking that the entire universe rotated around the Earth. Guess we're really proud of ourselves, huh? But it's indicating that there is so much going on here that we really have not got a clue about. Okay, now if you're wondering, can the universe really rearrange itself according to our free will? And what this is going to show you is that this is a black metal plate on top of a speaker, and it's got an oscillator underneath that's putting a tone out. And that tone is causing the salt crystals on there to reform accordingly. Now you're seeing it's going a little over 1200 hertz or cycles right now on there, and these patterns show up on here. Now, what are these patterns? You remember how you saw the Milky Way going back and forth? The sound waves that are vibrating out of this metal plate are literally doing the same thing. Where you see the salt gathering together, those are the valleys. Where you see the dark areas, those are the top parts. So you have the top parts having the salt crystals gravitationally go down to the bottom parts, and that's where you see the salt crystals coming together. As the frequency gets higher and higher, these patterns get more and more complex as you go through it. So the Edgar Cayce readings tell us that the sun is 93 million miles away, and yet sunspots on the sun are a result of the negative vibrations emanating from us, our thought patterns on the Earth, to cause sunspots 93 million miles away. It's only 8 minutes by the speed of light, but speed of thought is even faster than that, right? So you wind up we're able to go ahead and affect the sun from this far away. Imagine how much easier it is to be able to keep track of that when you're doing it right there with salt crystals here in the local area. All right. Wondering how the universe works so naturally. You're seeing all these little ball bearings here in the top going through a bunch of pins. And if you've ever wondered what's the natural, how does spirit manifest in 3D, you're watching that bell curve that you're so used to seeing on everything. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about IQ or emotional quotient or how much money you make or how patient you are or how cooperative you are. There is always going to be a bell curve to society as far as how we all come together. And this is showing you that the majority of us just naturally fall right there in the middle. And there are some that are not very good at it and some of us that are exceptional at it. This is just a natural pattern of the manifest universe in order to be able to go in this direction. Now, if you think that's amazing, watch the next one. They all fell into the correct slot according to the color. Now, I will say that there is a little bit more than just randomness to this, and I'm going to point out a couple of the things that I was able to figure out about it. But watch here in the beginning. Notice how much more of the red, yellow, and orange and the blue and the purple started over here to the right. It is not done with magnets, otherwise it wouldn't be perfect like it is right then. But there does seem to be something to do with the pattern of how they're stacked up here and how they end up down at the bottom accordingly. in order to be able to get the colors divided by that. Another one that people go, oh, well, no, it's done backwards. But if you look at it, you're going, no, in the beginning, that definitely didn't get them all to fall then and then go over to the right. So it isn't just that they had turned the camera upside down or something like that. But it does show you that physics has a way of being able to identify or separate things as clearly as this is doing. This is not just by CGI or something. I'll get a better description of it, I'm sure, someday. Okay, this top screen, it's kind of hard to see right here, but this is a man with a camera in the bottom. These are two different pictures. This top screen is what the camera is filming live. He's down here in this thing, and he's pointed in this direction, okay? So he is over here. So the reverse is he's showing a picture of these two people that are standing there. You're going to see how this comes together in a moment. But what this whole video is going to be about is showing how she's going to make different decisions in her life, and her life is going to constantly improve because of them. Right now, really in kind of a shoddy place, and the guy's just sitting there in a wife beater t-shirt, and they don't seem to be very happy with each other. And you see the top guy, he's not happy with her. He's walking out the door. She's not really saying goodbye to him. And notice the cameraman down here is on that TV that's up there, and notice what everybody's doing behind the scenes. Now, I'll quit describing that, and I'll go on to say all of the spirit plane helpers that we have are exactly like all of these stagehands in the back that are moving this equipment around. It's that they make sure that we have these chance meetings that take place, or the opportunities that come up. And as you watch this camera going around, you're seeing that her whole lifestyle is getting better and better and better. And you saw that she had a little puppy earlier. She doesn't have it yet, but they actually give there it is. There's the puppy. And in a little bit, you're going to see she hands that dog off to somebody else. See the little puppy right there, but she's going to get an older dog later on to show the passage of time going by. And see all of this work that's going behind the one person's decisions to improve their life over and over again. So he's back to the camera. Now he comes over and sees all the friends at the table there having some kind of a celebration. And now she's going to get her new dog. There's the bigger dog, so on and so forth. And so you're going to wind up seeing that her whole life, because of the decisions she's making in body, mind, and soul, kept improving her lifestyle, the conditions around her, and so on. So now she's going to say goodbye to Fido there, turn the TV off, and get on with her day. This is so great a representation of what it is like when we're here on earth and we have all of the angels, the guides, the spirit plane helpers that are all coming together to try to make our lives better and better. Now, this is me when I try to solve my problems without realizing that I am the problem. Obviously, that cat wants out of the water. And every time it takes a step, it's realizing I'm back in the water again. What in the world is going on here? And if we don't figure out what the rules of where we are all about, we're going to be in the same situation as the cat, doomed to repeat this over and over again until we wind up getting it right. So this cat is really a great indicator of how each one of us, when we keep running into the same problems each time, in one lifetime after the next, or even in the same lifetime, this is how it winds up going. Now, how long do you think it'll take just randomly shaking that tub of nails right there for them to get aligned? It's about 35, 40 seconds. And I know it's hard to believe as you're sitting there looking at it, but it's already starting to come together, as you can see at the lower levels, and it continues on until I'll stop the video just shy of it. But there it is. It winds up having all those nails inside of 35, 40 seconds, getting in perfect alignment with each other. But what does that take? That takes each one of us with our free will. Even if it was random motions as far as being able to shake that tub around, with our free will and a natural alignment of wanting to have greater cooperation through greater patience, through fellowship, and a desire for that all of this comes together in perfect alignment. And that's what we're here on the earth to do. Here is a human playing a keyboard, and these green dots and dashes and all that are think of a player piano. You've seen the little cutouts that they have in player pianos. That's exactly what you're seeing up here. Here's a player piano representation of what the music looks like from there. I haven't actually counted all those, but I'd have to guess there's at least a couple of dozen different ways that we experience music. And remember, Casey said that once you learn music, you've learned just about everything that there is to know in this manifest universe. But think of that. I'll expand on it a little bit. I'm sorry, I grew up a band geek, so I know what it's like to be cooperative in music. You're given your part of music, and you play that part, and it works so beautifully in the melody together. So there's cooperation. There's patience, because you'd like to be able to move up and play the, more exciting parts of the music to go along with. You are following one conductor, and that conductor is the one that sets the course for how everything's going on there, and that you are so glad to be involved with that group that makes such a beautiful thing happen as a work of art for people to appreciate. And that's the end. If you would like to have contact me with questions or comments about this, you have the edgarcaseyaz@gmail.com. I usually within a day respond to any of the comments that come in on the video after that. So feel free to be able to contact us directly with questions or comments, and I thank you for your attention.